I'm just going to be sharing with you why I started learning Korean, why I continued learning Korean, some similarities between Korean and Indian languages, and then finally some tips for absolute beginners. If you want to start learning Korean, if you don't know where to get started, I'll be sharing some tips for you.
Nobody&Co.
Hello everyone, my name is Anusha and welcome to my channel Nobody&Co. 안녕하세요 여러분, 저는 Anusha입니다. 오늘은 제가 한국어 공부를 어떻게 혼자 했는지 좀 알려드릴게요. So today I'm going to be sharing with you how I learned Korean all by myself, and you can too, and with nothing but free resources on the internet to guide you. And at the end of this video, I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite resources for learning Korean. And guys, these resources are so underrated. I have not seen these resources mentioned by anyone else in any other video about learning Korean. And trust me, I've seen a lot of videos about learning Korean. So yeah, stay tuned for those tips at the end of the video. Now, once you have crossed the beginner level, you're gonna go like, what now? What do I do? Where do I go from here? There's a point that you cross after which you feel like there's nothing on the internet to help you now. But that just means that you have reached an intermediate learning level, and don't worry, there's still a lot of resources on the internet to help you. So next up, let me share my favorite tips for intermediate Korean learners. So the number one tip I have for you, my fellow intermediate learner, is learn to type on a Hangul keyboard. All the textbooks have three things. They have reading, writing, and speaking. But they don't tell you that you need to learn typing. There are keyboard mats that come with Hangul on the keyboard, and you can basically place it on top of your own keyboard and it will show you the alphabets, and then you can learn how to type on the keyboard. I learned how to type without those mats. So I just have like the QWERTY keyboard, and I basically memorized where each letter would be, and then it took me around 3 months to learn how to type without having to look at any of the letters. And now once you've learned to type on a keyboard in Korean, it'll be really nice because whenever you want to search about something related to Korea, you can always switch to the Hangul keyboard and then type in Hangul, and your search results are going to be a lot easier. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type Korea news today. Okay. And what's gonna come up is BBC News, 9 News, and Korea Herald, and Z News. These are basically like international Korean newspapers. Now if I type in 한국어, 한국 뉴스 오늘. Alright, now what comes up is a lot of, there's KBS News, there's SBS News. When I type in Korean, Korean websites come up. And when I type in English, UK websites come up. So that just goes to show you that if you know how to type in Korean, your life is going to be a lot more easier and you will have access to a lot more accurate information about Korea. The second tip that I have for you is identify which are your strong areas and which ones are your weak areas. So there is speaking, reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar. Which one of these are you better at and which one of these are your weakest points? And once you found your weakest points, focus on getting that better. So when I reached an intermediate level, because I had followed the tip of listening to Korean 24/7, my speaking was really good. But my reading and writing were really bad. I would make basic spelling mistakes. Because I had been learning by myself, I never had a teacher to correct those spelling mistakes, and I had never done any writing practice. So my writing was really bad and my reading was very slow. These are the two most common areas in which people have problems. They usually read really slowly and they usually make a lot of spelling mistakes while writing. So how to work on these areas? Let's get started with that. Reading. If you read really slowly in Korean, don't worry, that's completely normal. What you have to do is reading practice. So the general tip that a lot of people give if you are slow at reading is go to children's news websites in Korean and read like news passages every day. Basically read a lot of stuff that's meant for children, so it'll have words that you understand. So there's a website called 어른이 동화 which has 어른이 news on it. You can use that for reading practice. I didn't find that tip to be very helpful. Instead, what I like to do is go on neighbor blogs And there's a lot of Koreans, of course, who blog about lots of things. So you can find blogs about things that you are normally interested in. There's like tech reviews, right? Like phone reviews, gadget reviews. There's restaurant reviews. There's blogs that just talk about everyday stuff. So find a neighbor blog that interests you and use that person's blogs as a reading practice for yourself. Next up is writing. If you make a lot of spelling mistakes, or if you have trouble correcting your sentences that you come up with when writing in Korean, what you can do is actually write some passages and then download the app Hello Talk and then post those passages under the correct me section of that app. There's a correct me, please correct me section of the app, where if you make a post in that section, Koreans will actually go through your passage and make corrections for you. It's a really great tool. So use that if you wanna get rid of all your spelling mistakes, basically. Now the third thing is writing, spelling and reading. All three of these go hand in hand. Reading more passages in Korean made my writing better. Writing more passages in Korean made my reading faster. So reading, writing and spellings, it's one big mixture of things. If you do all of them together, all of them will get better very quickly. Alright, finally let's get to speaking practice. Of course, the first tip that I said, even for beginners and even for intermediate learners, is keep listening to Korean. In fact, even now, if I stopped watching anything in Korean for like a month, after a month, my Korean would probably sound very unnatural because it's almost like studying for you. Yeah, watching a K-drama is equivalent to studying. Isn't that great? The second thing is talk to yourself in Korean. This is probably the biggest thing that has helped me improve my Korean. I talk to myself in my head in Korean. Like, I even groan in Korean. Like, if I hit my toe on a table, literally from the inside I would start to think, Aish! When I wake up in the morning, I'll go like, 오늘 뭐 할까요? If I see something that's really delicious, I would go like, oh, 맛있겠다. So, little things like that, when you start talking to yourself in Korean, it will really help with your pronunciation skills. And then, the third thing that follows from that is record yourself speaking Korean. So basically, choose a sentence and record yourself speaking that sentence in Korean, and then wait for a few weeks, for a few months, record yourself speaking the same thing again, and then you will be so surprised at the difference. Those are the three things. Listen to Korean, speak in Korean, record yourself in Korean, and review and repeat the same process all over again. Another tip I have for intermediate Korean learners is learn the difference between dialects. There's a point in everyone's Korean learning journey where you realize that there are different dialects that Korean can be spoken in. There's the Busan dialect, there's the Daegu dialect, there's other dialects as well. I don't remember which Thedapara it was, but it was when I was watching one of those when I was like, huh? Why don't I understand a single word? And then I realized it's because it was like a Busan dialect that they were speaking in. So learn to recognize the dialects. So, if you watch a movie or a period drama and it's in a different dialect, at least you'll know that it's not this whole dialect, so you'll be a little bit careful if you come across any new words or anything like that in that dialect. Alright, the last tip I have for intermediate learners is make new friends on Hello Talk, and don't be afraid to talk to them in Korean, because that feature that I mentioned, that please correct me feature, Koreans, without even having to ask them, they will correct the spellings, they will correct the spacing between the words, they will give me tips on how to use better phrases, and of course if you have any questions about cultural stuff, you can ask your Korean friends and you can teach them English. So it's not just them giving you stuff, it's like a give and take situation. So you can teach them English or another language. There's a lot of Koreans on there who want to learn like Spanish or French. So if you know any of those languages, you can teach them that and they can teach you Korean. So it's really nice. Alright, it's finally time for the most exciting part of the video. I'm gonna share my favorite, highly underrated Korean learning resources, you guys. I'm so excited. These resources are probably my favorite and most fun ways of learning Korean. So, number one is the YouTube channel Your Korean's Hem. Your Korean's Hem is basically a beautiful Korean teacher called Hemmol. She shares the subtleties of the Korean language in every video that she makes, And my favorite series of hers is a series called Real Korean Listening Practice, where she basically films herself talking to her Korean friends or even her Korean mom in Korean, and then she gives you subtitles and then she gives you English subtitles, and basically it's really good listening practice because you get to listen to what a natural Korean conversation sounds like. Apart from that series, she has a lot of amazing videos on different uses of the same words in Korean. Her most recent video was about different uses of the word 신경, and oh my god, it was so interesting to watch. So definitely check out Your Korean Sam. Her videos get like 500, 1000 views when I feel like they should be getting 1,000,000 views. So please go check her out, subscribe to her channel if you're serious about learning Korean. The second resource I have for you is Reddit. Reddit is the best place on the internet for anyone who wants to learn deeply about any topic, and Korean is no exception. The subreddit r/Korean is really good if you have any questions about Korean when you are learning it. Chances are that question has already been answered on that subreddit. The third resource I have for you is the Egg Bun Education Instagram account. Egg Bun Education is actually an app, but I have not used the app, so I cannot speak about it. I have, however, followed their Instagram account and I really love it because Egg Bun Education, when they post, they don't share words that you would normally find in a Korean dictionary. They actually share words that are like slang or like phrases that are really popular amongst Korean youth these days. So yeah, their Instagram account is really good because you would never find those words in a dictionary, but they're so important to know if you are serious about learning Korean. Alright, the fourth resource is actually the name of the textbooks that I've used in my college level Korean class. Guys, Shiot is so hard to pronounce. It's the Sogang University Hangugo textbooks. They have all levels starting from 1 to like 4 or 5 or something. So if you're a beginner, you can pick up their 1A, 1B level textbooks. If you're an intermediate learner, you can pick up their higher level textbooks. But my favorite thing about these textbooks is that they have a lot of vocabulary words. They have whole lists for each chapter. They have lists of new words and new phrases that you can use. You know, using textbooks gives you a more studious approach to learning Korean. It's more structured. You get to learn grammar and stuff more quickly. And it's also a very accurate resource. So if you're worried about the accuracy of your Korean learning, then Sogang Hangugo is really good. Alright, the last two resources are just my two favorite apps, HelloTalk and Papago. My favorite thing about HelloTalk actually is that I use it when I want to ask a really specific question that I won't be able to use Google for. So for example, I needed to email my Korean professor, but I didn't know whether I should say 내일 만나요 or 내일 뵙겠습니다. Like I didn't know which level of formality to use with my professor in an email. So I posted the question on HelloTalk and a lot of Korean people gave me suggestions on what would be the better option. So things like this, you know, I could never Google this question of how should I email my Korean professor. But if you post it on HelloTalk, the good thing is people are very active on that app. So if you post, you will probably get a reply within like 1 minute. So HelloTalk is really good for really specific questions. And then of course Papago is really good because it has an AI based translation app. It's developed by Koreans, so there's fewer mistakes when it comes to actually translating the stuff accurately, and it keeps getting updated. So yeah, those two apps are really good. They're gonna be your best friends in your Korean learning journey. And with that, I come to the end of this video. I literally put everything that I know and love and trust in this video for you guys to use as well. I look forward to making more Korean related content both on my Instagram and on my YouTube. As my previous subscribers know, I am soon going to be doing a challenge where I try to speak in Korean only for 24 hours. So that's gonna be fun. So let me know if you have any other ideas for Korean related videos. If you have any further questions, please comment down below and let me know what those questions are. If there's anything that was not clear to you from my video, then I can elaborate on it in the comments. Just let me know and I will do that for you. And if you have any resources that you would like to add to this list, you can also comment those down below. And as always, like this video if you want to, subscribe to my channel if you want to, and keep supporting Nobody&Co if you want to. But if you don't want to, don't do anything. Bye.
Okay, phony guy can judge. Then why you acting dumb? It's sounding like a front. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
God be my witness, let me really